Welcome to the Bounty Zero X podcast. I'm your host, Angelo Adam, founder and CEO of Bounty Zero X. Bounty Zero X is a decentralized bounty hunting network powered by the BNTY token. Today is August 22nd, 2019, and my guest on the show is Ada Xiao. Welcome to the podcast, Ada. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me here.
So tell me about your role at PlatOn. What exactly do you do, and what is your title?
So I'm the CSO, which stands for the Chief Strategic Officer of PlatOn. Well, sort of like in charge of a lot of things. For example, like it goes from, all the legal entity and legal work, and then to business expansion in, overseas in other countries. So I'm more so like in charge of the overseas area, and hence we are, having this conversation.
Great. So before starting PlatOn, tell me a little bit about your professional experience and educational background.
Okay, so it's kind of interesting how I got into this industry. I was from a purely finance background. I did my BA in Cambridge with economics degree, and then I was working in Hong Kong as well as in New York in like completely just finance firms. And then I did my MBA in Columbia in New York. It was like a great time. I met a lot of very interesting people, and that was in 2013 when I graduated from my MBA. And at that time, on Wall Street, they actually have like a buzzword which is called fintech, and that's when I got very interested in like this new technology and how you can change how the finance world actually functions. And I looked into P2P lending and crowdfunding as well as internet insurance. I actually work in one of those internet insurance firms in China, and then eventually I landed a job in a venture capital, and it was in sort of investing in blockchain products in China, and that's how I got into this industry. And I came across this very amazing project called PlatOn, and it's dedicated to solve the privacy issues that decentralized network is facing right now. So I thought it was quite intriguing, and that's when I decided that I want to join this project and see how it pans out.
Yeah. So what year was that when you joined? Was it around 2018 or before, or how long ago was that?
It's actually earlier than 2018. It was back in, I think it was like end of 2016. Yeah, It was like almost like 3 years ago, actually more than 3 years ago.
So PlatOn is a blockchain-based infrastructure for privacy computation and distributed economies. So that is kind of a complex and I guess a complicated description of what your product and what you work on. So how would you describe that in I guess more simple and straightforward terms? So tell me what you guys work on a day-to-day basis.
Right, absolutely. I guess like I want to start with explaining the two most imminent problems that we think today's decentralized network, i.e. blockchain, is actually facing. One would be the scalability issues, and as I know, there are a lot of projects out there who are trying to solve this problem in like different ways, different approaches. And then the second one would be privacy problem. And so basically what PlatOn's trying to do, PlatOn is focusing on solving the privacy issue. And with, we are adopting various cryptographic algorithms. So basically encryption and decryption and, algorithms which can make sure that we can make sure the data is well encrypted before it's shared or used for any collaborative computations. And all the encryption will happen off-chain, and then the desired outcome will actually recorded on-chain to ensure its authenticity. And that's our approach to the privacy problem. And as for the scalability problem, we're also trying to solve that because we have, commercial clients who are worried about the efficiency of using a decentralized network. And the approach that we adopt was this mechanism, this technology called verifiable computation. And what it stands for is that, like the traditional old ways, if you want to reach a consensus in a decentralized network, basically it required all the nodes to run the same computation repetitively. So that slowed down the whole process. However, with the verifiable computation, only one or a few selected nodes will be running the computation, and then a short proof will be generated. All the other nodes will only need to verify this short proof to reach a consensus. So that greatly, enhance the performance and the time that's required to do the entire calculation.
Mhm.
And so I'm not sure if I explain it in, easy to
Yeah.
understand
Yeah,
fashion.
that's very helpful. Thank you. So just to
Okay.
go back and just review some of the things you mentioned. So there's the scalability issue and the privacy issue. So just taking first the privacy issue. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for example, there are some of the main blockchains that are the most well-known blockchains today, like Bitcoin and Ethereum. All of the transactions are public, so that you can go to Blockchain Explorer for Ethereum and you can view all of the transactions that are included in each block.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise with Bitcoin, you can see all the transactions, who it was sent from, and who it was sent to, the amount that was sent, the amount of Bitcoins in each transaction in each block. And then there are other blockchains, like, for example, Zcash, and which is one of the other popular blockchains, but it is known as being private, where all of the transactions are encrypted with, I think, like a zero knowledge proof, where you can view the blockchain explorer, but none of the transactions are visible to third parties. So what you're saying is that the PlatOn blockchain is more like Zcash in that only the transactions are, all the transactions are private except for those entities which have the cryptographic, I guess, proof required to view any of the given transactions.
Right. I guess like we're kind of similar, but a little bit different. I guess the whole privacy issue is quite a like a big topic, and there are different ways to ensure part of the privacy is not exposed when it should not be. And for Zcash, we're also working on something that's sort of kind of similar to zero knowledge proof, and that's I think that's dedicated to make sure that the transaction and will remain anonymous, and then the whole transaction will not be exposed on chain. So that's basically trying to make sure that the privacy of the transaction is well protected. And that's one thing we are also doing right now as well. And we're working with some financial firms who really care about not exposing their transactions while collaborating with other firms. And then there's like another thing that we're working on right now, which is not exactly the same as zero knowledge proof. It's called multi-party computation. And that's basically a very big concept. What it meant is that we have multiple parties and multiple, organizations, and we want to collaborate and we want to compute one outcome using all our data. And then the outcome will be beneficial for all of us, but then not a single one of us want to review our original data. With the traditional centralized way, it's actually kind of hard because you have to trust the third party, the centralized third party, and usually it's not exactly very trustworthy. So that I think it was back in 1980s, a professor came out and then proposed this concept of multi-party computation, and it's trying to achieve a state where like all data can be encrypted before it's shared or used for any collaboration, so that only the outcome is revealed to all of us, and we can make sure our data is never leaked, and but then still get the final outcome that we all desire. And to actually achieve that, there are multiple different schools of thoughts and different techniques, including gobble circuit, secret sharing, homomorphic encryption, etc., etc. And those are like different cryptographic algorithms, and we are working on those as well. And that's to share. So that's to basically solve the problem with data collaboration and data sharing. A lot of, the organizations, they want to monetize their data. Individuals, they want to monetize their data, but they don't want to do that because the fear of, leaking sensitive and, credentials and those informations, etc. So that's the
Yes. Yeah, there's
potential.
a clear business case for privacy in blockchains, and as you mentioned, banks and other financial services have a requirement that in order to use this technology, to transfer funds from various parties, and for other financial related use cases, they need to have the ability for transactions and data to be shared privately and cryptographically secure in a secure manner. So I want to move on to the scalability issue, because you mentioned there were two things: the privacy thing and then the scalability thing. So with scalability, there seems to always be this trade-off between decentralization, so in a case where all of the nodes in the network process all of the transaction for any given block, and then on the other hand, centralization and the ability to increase the number of transactions per section, per block or per second. And so you have some of these other blockchains which are processing, more than Ethereum's like 20 transactions per second, but at the cost of decreased efficiency and decreased decentralization. So there seems to be this trade-off. And so what, for example, Ethereum is working on in their Ethereum 2.0 is this concept of sharding transactions, so that not all of the transactions that occur in each block are processed by each miner or each staker. But it seems like the consensus mechanism and the way that you have structured the network is such that not all of the nodes need to process all the transactions, so you're able to achieve a higher transaction volume. So what is currently the number of transactions that you're able to process per second, or what are some of the performance metrics of the current version of your testnet?
Right. So I guess like it really depends on the scenarios and use cases. And as I've mentioned that we have like some clients, like enterprise clients in like financial industries and healthcare industries, and they have their own use case where we have to design and customize the solution for them. And some of them they have like very complicated algorithms and formulas that we have to take into account. And some of them, they just have like so many nodes and so many parties to participate in one calculation. So I guess like at least for my understanding, for an enterprise solution, if we were only looking at the TPS, then it really varies. It depends on how complicated like the whole structure and the business flow is. And then it depends on the real use case, and then the real life scenarios, and how much data you're trying to process, within a specific frame of period of time. So that kind of varies, because if you have like only two nodes and then the calculation is very simple, then the TPS will go really high. Whereas compared to you have 100 nodes and then with quite complicated formula, then it's probably going to go down quite a lot. But then as for our testnet, so we actually have already launched our testnet in January this year. So it's more than half a year ago. And we welcome, like everyone to come and test it out and just to give us any feedbacks, because we're trying to perfect it so it can smooth into our mainnet. And right now, the approximations that the TPS can go to like 3,000 to 5,000 per second. That's our basically in the testing environment.
Okay, great. So 3,000 to 5,000 per second is pretty high, even in a testing environment. So the way that you just described the way that the blockchain would be structured is that it would be customized to the specific business use case that the client needs. And so part of the services that you offer are consulting services to businesses to be able to kind of have like be able to build out their infrastructure for whether it's IoT or whether it's whatever the business case is, to build out this type of data infrastructure using your blockchain technology, but then customizing it to the specific use case. So that's a little bit different than other blockchains, like, for example, Ethereum or some of these other blockchains that are out there, where they just have like a general framework that can be used by anyone for one specific task, but they don't really create like a unique or custom blockchain solution for each company. So how do you that's kind of just a question overall for the industry. Where do you see it developing? Because it kind of seems like, each business or each use case will have to adopt a specific type of blockchain or decentralized ledger technology that really serves what their requirements are. And so it will kind of depend. There wouldn't be just one blockchain that serves all these different types of industries and all of these different types of use cases, but rather just custom blockchain solutions. And it seems like you're positioning yourself in that ecosystem as a way to help set up and help customize these types of blockchain or business use cases in each of those cases.
Right. I mean, I don't really want to speculate about what's going to happen in the future, but then it's just my belief and from what I've seen, especially with talking to the industry clients. I think blockchain is definitely great. It's a whole concept, and I truly believe that like public chain is definitely because the new like sort of it's reconstruct the way that people actually work with each other, and it make it possible for people who don't really know each other to reach a consensus and do businesses and transaction, etc., etc. And so a lot of financial firms such as like Goldman Sachs and then those on Wall Street, they are very interested in this technology for a reason, because we see like especially today we have like exponentially growing numbers of smart devices, and they are generating more and more data each day. And the communication between the devices and then the whole network as expands would be in a decentralized fashion. Centralized mechanism would not be as effective as a decentralized one. However, from a very practical point of view, what we see is that the clients, especially from more sort of like heavily regulated and traditional industries, they're trying to experiment with new technologies, but then we have to give them some time. They are experimenting in within their comfort zone right now, but that's something we have to do. It's like we're educating the market, and uh, maybe gradually as the technology become more mature and we have like better technologies protect the privacy, that once you put your data and transaction onto a public chain, then at least I want to know that it's safe. Then I mean, like I hope and I believe that we can see more and more adoption, and eventually we can see mass adoption of blockchain in all industries.
So I want to move to some of the other projects and companies that you have worked with in the cryptocurrency space. So you've worked, for example, with Real ID on their eKYC solution.
Mhm.
You've worked with IrisNet on privacy preserving computation services.
Mhm.
You've worked with HashQuark, KeyStore. You also have partnerships with Wanxiang, AITOS, ITOS, for their blockchain of things solutions on cellular devices. You've also worked with Meet.one, which is an EOS-based project on producing nodes for financial service platform on a financial service platform for cryptocurrencies. So it seems like since you're still on testnet, but you still have developed partnerships and worked with a number of companies in the cryptocurrency space. What is your strategy with onboarding new partners and clients, and how do you, from your perspective, how do you, build trust in the cryptocurrency industry, and what type of partnerships are you looking for potential clients for your company?
Mhm. Right. So Um, most of the partners that you mentioned that we're working with right now, we are trying to build and provide off-chain privacy preserving services for them. So we can work with other public chains, no problem, because the strength and our main focus is at off-chain cryptography algorithms that we use for privacy preserving, like for just preserving the privacy of the data and informations and so on and so forth. So we did actually have a lot of partners even before the launch of our mainnet, because we do have, you know, kind of like more mature sort of like solutions to, tailor to their needs to protect privacy on their own networks. So that's what we're working with them right now. And as for, like the bigger projects that we're working with, I guess like the smart city in Hangzhou, and we're working with Wanxiang on that. It's one of the biggest project we're working on right now because we're building the infrastructure for them. We're using our own blockchain as the backbone that the city is going to be built up on. Um, I guess like it's really hard to say which industry we're focusing on because we're working with the financial industry and healthcare industry and logistics as well, because those industries have a lot of data. They have gigantic amount of data. However, they are very heavily regulated and they care about their privacy a lot. So they are looking for solutions to better collaborate in a decentralized fashion, but however, can protect the privacy of their sensitive data. So I guess that's kind of the profile of the clients that we are looking for, and that's really need our technology to solve the pain points at least like for now.
So let's talk about a very specific type of use case for IoT, decentralized ledger services. So you've mentioned how a smart city can use IoT and decentralized ledger technology in their city. So, for example, an IoT-enabled trash can in a public park where a trash can will send notification to the parks department once it's almost full. A garbage can will then be dispatched to empty it. And then the trash sends another automated notification to the parks department when it's empty, and then the waste management company receives instant payment for its service. So that's kind of like a simple example. But what are some of the other demands that cities, or these so-called smart cities, like that you mentioned, Hangzhou, when they come to you and say, okay, we want to adopt this decentralized technology, how can it help us in a practical sense? And what type of use cases can we use it for in our city for data management solutions? So can you talk a little bit about some of the specific use cases that you're seeing people use this technology for?
Right, absolutely. Let me just give you like a few examples. The first one that we're working on right now, and we really see the potential in it, is to train autopilot for electric vehicles. So for the smart city in Hangzhou, it's basically the investor in the smart city. They are a car manufacturer, auto part manufacturer in China, and they have also acquired lithium battery manufacturers for greener energies and to fill their electric vehicles. And so there are two things that we're going to use the blockchain for. The one thing is to manage, the entire life cycle of a lithium battery. As you know, the lithium battery can be used for cars first, but then once it's retired, it still have energy left in it. So we can track the whole life cycle of the battery, and so that we can make sure that we know when we can replace that battery and use it for, some scenarios which require less energy and less power, so that we don't waste any energy, so to speak. And that's one scenario. And the second scenario would be the autopilot training that I was talking about. So, like for Tesla and a lot of the EV companies, they're trying to train the autopilot so that, driverless cars can be actually be mass produced and for our daily life. And so, but then, however, all the algorithms need to be trained by, like massive amount of data, just make sure that it doesn't have any error and cause any casualty. So we will be collecting a lot of data from, like driving behaviors in the city, and so that we can use those data, the historical data, to actually better train the auto driver, the auto driving algorithms. And of course, a lot of people will be concerned about privacy issues, like, oh, you are tracking my driving behaviors and you're recording all the data on a blockchain. And that's why we really need this privacy preserving technology to make sure that, okay, we are managing your data to better serve you, but then we promise that we're not gonna do that at the cost of anyone's privacy.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense for the usage of training AI data models and also for electric lithium batteries, so that once they're retired out of service, the remaining energy in the battery can be used for other use cases. And you're using the decentralized ledger technology to tie the history of the battery to the blockchain so that you can then manage all of these batteries that are being produced and managing their life cycle from once they're created to when they go into service to when they go out of service to the when they're then retired from service and used for another purpose, and then tracking each individual I guess ID for each battery. So now let's move on to briefly talk about the future for PlatOn. So you guys are currently have successfully launched the test version of the MVP in 2018, Q4 2018. You're planning on launching the mainnet live network in the next few months by the end of 2019. So tell me a little about some of the upcoming specific goals that you have and milestones that you're working on completing in the next 8 to 12 months.
Okay. I guess at right now, the most important, I would say, would be the launch of our mainnets. So our team in Shenzhen and Hangzhou, they are working day and night to make sure that it will be stable once it's launched. So stability is actually very important to us. We're trying to make sure that it can be stable once we launch it, and once people are using it, it's not gonna just go down or not usable at all. And I guess that would happen by the end of this year, and we will continue to update and launch the functions, including like multi-party computations and verifiable computations. We will be updating those, upgrading those throughout the next year in 2020. And hopefully by the end of next year or the early 2021, we will have launched a customized hardware which will be basically supporting the multi-party computations and all those algorithms that we are providing right now through a hardware to make sure that we can achieve higher performance.
Great, that sounds good. And so, will you also be launching a bug bounty or any type of beta testing program? Because currently you're also running a social media bounty, which you're rewarding users who want to take part in your community by talking about your product or writing articles about your product or tweeting or following or retweeting about it. So what is your plan for community growth and helping to raise awareness about your product and services over the next 6 to 12 months? Can you talk a little about the bug bounty that you're planning and any type of community growth techniques that you have on your roadmap?
Right, absolutely. So since it's getting close to the date of the launch of our mainnet, we'll be releasing, and we have already planned in our pipeline, we'll be having a test program, the beta test program on our testnet and mainnet, and we'll also be launching bug bounties as well on the mainnet. And so I guess our IT team, our tech team is working very hard on, designing, including when we're launching that and what kind of bounty we're offering right now. And I know that you might be wondering about more details, but then I guess we will release more details closer to the dates. And as for the incentive mechanism, as a foundation of PlatOn, we do have a incentive fund for the developers who contribute and in any way, whether it's developers or researchers, etc., to the network and to the PlatOn ecosystem. And we will also be launching a eco fund where we will be investing in projects who basically building around the PlatOn network. All those details will be released, soon on our website, and I will definitely keep you updated with all the progress and everything. And as I would say, I would have to emphasize that the community is definitely something that we care a lot. It's our priority. And since we are an open source project, and of course, the community and the activities and everything, an active community is what makes it successful. So we will be, I know that we haven't come out a lot and be publicizing about ourselves, but that's something that we're working on for now on. And we'll make sure that we have more news and more good news that we can bring to the community.
Oh, great. So I think that's a good place to end it. It was a pleasure having you on and learning about your product, and we look forward to hearing more news in the future as the product develops. And we'd love to have you back on for another interview when you have your next milestone to announce. And it was a pleasure talking to you. So we can just leave it there. My guest on the show is Ada Xiao, CSO of PlatOn. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me here. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Bounty Zero X podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast below. Check out bountyzerox.io, the #1 bounty hunting platform where you can complete work and earn cryptocurrency. Please consult your professional financial investment and tax advisors before making any investment in initial coin offerings. Bounty Zero X does not provide investment or financial advice and does not endorse or recommend investment in any ICOs advertised on the Bounty Zero X podcast or website.